Good morning, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing. We wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you tuning in today, we welcome you in. I'm recording this on the Thursday before the holiday. I record all my episodes early, except when I fall behind. And my kid went to school today, as she's supposed to. And when she came back, I said, "What did you do?" Because these teachers are professionals. They know the day before a holiday, they're not getting anything done. The energy in the classroom is just there, and they've got to figure out a way to dissipate it. So they've taught everything they need to ahead of time. They've budgeted their class time, and they know today it's not necessarily fun and games. We can't just let the kids do what they want. But at the same token, getting them to focus on the War of 1812 is just not going to go over well. So I have no faults with the teacher for doing this. But the teacher decided they were going to have a class debate. Well, more of a discussion than a debate. And what topic did the teacher decide would be a good idea for 11-year-olds? Roughly 11. I'm sure there's a 10-year-old in the class. I'm sure there's a 12-year-old in the class, but roughly 11. He picked racism. Now, it's interesting. I think kids are, 11-year-old might actually be too late to address it, but the same token, you can get some interesting comments out of them. And I kind of wish I had a recording of the class because it sounded like they went down a very interesting path. So apparently, the first two people talking, they brought up the usual talking points. And as they went around the class, somebody said we should change the name of Canada because it's racist. And that's when the teacher kind of lost control because people were piling on that suggestion. So when my little girl relayed that to me, I started thinking, is Canada a racist name? I'm sure you can apply the logic, but the name Canada comes about from what they can figure from the early explorers like John Cabot and people like that running into the Micmac. And I might have the tribes wrong. I'm very sorry, but back in my day, the tribal history in the First Nations was kind of glossed over. But when John Cabot asked, "What's over there?" through whatever translator that he had, the First Nations person looked where he was pointing and said, "Canada," which meant in their language, the village, our village, something village. Nothing racist about that. Unless you really want to twist your mind around, an intruder from the outside being considered part of the village. No, we're not going down that route. But where it gets interesting, neither of them had the idea they were at the beginning of a huge continent. So the First Nations person was answering logically. Point across the bay, yeah, that's the village. What do you want to know? And John Cabot, or whoever it was, "Oh, that's Canada." And that's where the story ends. The name the area John Cabot named was Acadia. So that's where you get Acadians, which became Cajuns, and they moved down to New Orleans, and they became, the Cajuns of New Orleans fame. But Acadia was named after a Greek city, Arcadia. It was a paradise, and that's what they applied to the land of Canada. They named the rest of it after the village, but Arcadia, which is where they were standing, was named after an idealistic, semi-mythical Greek city. And that might be racist, applying other people's names to your abode. But it doesn't stop there. That name hip hopped. And I don't mean it started dancing to some drums and a snare drum. No, but Quebec got named Lower Canada and Ontario got named Upper Canada. The reason for that is while Quebec is bigger and goes further north, its territory is more lowlands, whereas where it crosses into Ontario, there's a lot more mountains and plateaus. So they thought the upper place was because it was higher. It isn't overall, but at the same token, that's what the explorers were dealing with. They didn't have satellites and everything. But that name of Canada, Canada, however it was pronounced, got applied to all those people. Now here you can make a racist argument. Right now, there's the Iroquois nations that we were always told to call Iroquois are saying that was the name their enemies gave to them and they want to be called by, well, actually, I don't know what they want to be called by. This is something that's not just happened. It's probably been discussed among them for some times. I don't know, for a while they were trying to be the 7-11 nations. I forget how many nations it was, and that's a whole argument for another day. So was it technically racist to take a First Nations term from one place and apply it to another? It's not the world's best thing. If you have a nickname and we're not friends and I call you by that nickname, I'm not being very nice to you. Even worse, if I went in public go, ha ha, Mr. Slimy Hands, I have no idea what kind of nickname that would be. But this is a problem that we're dealing with in the modern age. Yes, you can spin an argument that the name Canada is racist. Or at the very least, it's extremely out of context, given it was a little town, and now it's applied to the second biggest nation in the entire earth. I still think that's a bit of a stretch. You see, one thing people have forgot is people tend to name things in honor of other things. Now, I'm pretty sure that the Micmac, while they might not have been friends with the Iroquois, and forgive me for using that word, I don't know another word, but they weren't the ones that went around naming them. They probably did have a derogatory term, but I don't know enough about the First Nations to know who called who what. And I'm admitting that. That's a personal character flaw. But imagine changing the name of a whole country. What would we change it to? Yes, there are options on the table. We could... there's 1,000 names that people could come up with. But what makes me wonder... Okay, here's a good place to go. The Washington Redskins. Obviously an offensive name. It would upset people because it's a literal derogatory term. I won't give you an equivalent because it goes down some nasty roads. The Cleveland Indians, while the logo is certainly offensive, what is it? Something Smokin' Joe or something? I forget what it is. Chief Wahoo, that's it. You can definitely get rid of that. There's no question in anybody's mind. And I think they have, but I could be wrong. But then you start getting getting into the Kansas City Chiefs. Well, Chiefs is a respectable name. Tribes generally had a chief or leader or something like that. And yeah, you have to twist an argument again to say this is offensive. It's not the world's best, but the same token, standing next to the Washington, whatever they're going to be in the next year or two, because they didn't copyright their name as it is. People also got upset with the Washington Bullets. Washington, what is it with you in naming your sports teams horrible names? So they changed it to the Wizards. Okay, now you're making fun of Celtic mythology, and, well, wizards are technically worldwide. So you might want to rethink that one too, but they've been that way for about 20 years now. There has to be a point of reason where we know what's deliberately offensive. And I'm not saying the Iroquois are wrong saying they want to be known by whatever name they decide to pick. It's been unfortunate that it took so long in the game for them to stand up, but we should respect them standing up for themselves. That's a no-brainer. I'm going to say this because my wife is a particular group. No one's going to name. Oh, actually, I don't need to include anybody else. Okay, we got the Boston Celtics, or Celtics, or however you want to pronounce it. Is that a racist name? Because we're following the same logic. It should be. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Yeah. You're kind of putting two words together that don't need to be together. So at what point do we stop rationalizing? The New England Patriots. Well, right now, we have a lot of groups calling themselves Patriots that are sketchy to say the least. It's kind of a catch-all term for right-wingers that would like to do harm to others to preserve some sort of ideal that hasn't existed realistically in a long time. Patriotism is the virtue of the vicious, as Sir Oscar Wilde said. This is a train you can go down and never quite come back to unless everybody agrees to name everything after animals. And even then, some animals are used as derogatory terms. It's a never-ending fight. But this is a debate we need to have, because if a class of 11-year-olds can get into a spirited debate about it, a class of legislators could probably get into an even more interesting debate about it. It's something that needs to be addressed. Kind of heavy fare for a Sunday, but at the same token, it's something we can't ignore. With that, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Silverlight Show. If you did, please hit like, share, because sharing is caring. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Don't forget to click the link don't forget to click the icon down below that will notify you every time there's a new episode. And we hope you have a fantastic day.